sir. All right. Let's do it. Johnny. I'm John. Nice to meet you, man.
Good to meet you, bro. Good to
I'll
meet you.
shake your hand again just for the camera.
No worries.
All right, just want to kind of set it up. Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely.
So, like, you're kind of like a viral sensation in your own right. You've been in... We saw you in the Softway Underbelly videos.
Yes.
That first one is like an incredible story that you share. And then you appeared in an episode of Odd One Out that, I knew it was a good episode, but I had no idea it was going to travel as far as it has.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I wanted to sit down, watch the video with you, kind of get your 2 cents on sort of how you read the room.
Sure.
As you were playing the game.
Yeah.
And then, I'd just love to kind of see where the conversation takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
All right, let's do it. Odd One Out, 5 gang members versus 1 fake. Well, but just before we start, what was your kind of like feeling going into the shoot? Was there anything?
I was kind of surprised because like they put it, I felt like we're all treated VIP because they like separated all of us, right? So yeah, when I walked in, I was just like, oh man, this is pretty crazy. It's like a dark room and we're just, center of attention was all on us. So I'm like, man, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you saw the other cast members, did you have like any initial reads on them or?
I knew one of them off the bat. Yeah. I was like, Gil, actually, when I seen him, I was like, okay, I seen this dude like on social media somewhere. And, as he continued to speak, I was like, okay, he's coming back to like, memory and stuff like that. So, yeah.
All right. Well, let's let it rip.
Yeah.
I'm in the gang.
I'm in the gang.
I'm in the gang.
I'm in the gang.
I'm in a gang.
I am in a gang.
I think when she says it like that, I don't know why, that just made me bust up, bro. Like
Oh,
the first time I seen it, she's like, I am in a gang. It's like, and I seen the comments, it was like EA Sports.
It's in the game.
Where you grew up at? Queens.
Oh, New York.
Yeah.
Where you from?
Queens.
Like, any neighborhood?
East Elmhurst, 97th Street.
Okay, how about you, my man? Where at?
Gotham's.
Okay.
Chang. San Valley.
I grew up in West LA. I'm from Playboy's gang.
So with her, like, I kind of knew automatically, like, she was a thug.
How
I just like, it was just her whole demeanor and the way she was like carrying herself, even when we were all getting like mic'd up.
Yeah.
She was just kind of like, it seems like she's been through a lot, And then Gil too, when he was just like questioning people, he started off, I was just like, yo, this guy's, he looks familiar. I really didn't like put 2 and 2 together, but yeah, he was kind of like very confident in the way that he was speaking too.
Yeah. I remember when we were casting it, we felt like it was very important for there to be a woman.
Yeah.
At least one woman,
Yeah.
because that is like an aspect of, I think, gang life that's overlooked is like the maternal figures.
Yeah.
Was that an element in your experience?
Yes, absolutely, bro. In our gangs we have like the women side, right? So it's like, yeah, it's definitely real, especially in California, I would say.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
Okay, where you from?
Compton.
Okay, go ahead.
This guy,
Down straight power.
he was trying to take control.
Yeah,
for
he
sure.
was.
Where you from? You told me Queens. I'm asking where you from. We here still.
That part I was laughing.
Huh?
Again, East 16th, Newkirk.
Okay.
I'm gonna call my people real quick.
Yeah. How's the jail system over there where you at? You ever been to jail?
I was in the feds and in the state, so the
Okay.
federal game is totally different. So I was in MDC Brooklyn
All right.
and MCC Manhattan, which is for a federal pretrial. I did 3 years in the juvenile and 3 years in the feds.
All right. You women?
Not locked
No time at all? How about you?
Been in YA, Nellis YA. Was at SRCC first. Got out after that, 67 days. Did 8 years and some change. They gave me 10, 85%. As an adult. As a okay.
So it's like you went to YA too, huh?
Well, me, no, I missed YA. I went from camp to after that to prison, San Quentin.
What level were you in?
2.
That gave me
So how do they jump you guys in your
suspicions.
hood over there
Like,
where you're at from? How do they
when-
question the neighborhood?
Suspicious of who? Of him?
Of Matt Ball, yeah.
How come?
Because I was just like, San Quentin is a level 4 yard. They do have a level 2, which is like minimum security. But, when he said that, I was kind of shocked. And then when she reacted next to me too, I was like, oh, this chick kind of knows at least the levels. So either she's in a gang or her family's been in a gang, right? So yeah, and I was just like, that's like saying like you don't really go to San Quentin unless it's like something pretty crazy, you know, like but he was like, yeah, I only did 2 years, and I'm like, okay.
So there's a mismatch there.
Yeah, a little bit, you know, but I mean, he could have, which in the end he was right, you know, he went for a gun charge, but I was just kind of shocked that a lot of people go to San Quentin for that, or he went to San Quentin for that.
Yeah, it is interesting that, you know, people from like with gang experience are like such experts of like the law and prison.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you know it better than like an
Yeah.
average citizen.
I would say, yeah, we that's like our whole career is based off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't get involved fully into gang stuff until I went into MDC Brooklyn. I got jumped in.
And you, my man?
I jumped in.
You jumped in? How many guys?
About 5.
What they call them, remember? No. The guys that jumped you in.
Oh, the homies.
With the homies.
This
I
is
remember
where I
homies
was
jumping in.
just,
The homie Chapo, the homie
you know.
Sinbad, the homie Trouble.
It all starts falling apart.
You gotta remember who beats you up.
The homie Dave, the homie Big Mike.
he kind of gets shaky here, you know,
Other nigga, I ain't really know him.
Okay.
How old are you?
36.
You say you never been to jail?
that part.
I'm young, but man, I wasn't even in the life like that, man. I was in to get money.
So he says, I'm young and I wasn't in the life
but I
like that.
still end up.
And wait, and what does that mean?
So like it's either one or the other, and it's like either you're young. If you're young, you're in the life like that.
Yeah, because that's when you get drawn in.
Right, because you know gangbanging is a young man sport. You know, it's like the NBA. You know, and so I'm like, he's young, but he wasn't in it like that. Okay, and then it just started to kind of unravel. And I was watching him, and he was, you know, he's a big dude, but he was breathing heavier than he normally would. You know.
I mean, if I was him, I would have been so nervous. Like, I wouldn't have a shot.
right.
That's kind of like the funny thing about this episode. If there's any episode where I feel like people are gonna just, it's gonna be hard to not get caught.
Yeah.
It seemed like this was the topic.
Yeah.
So who jumped in and played with?
Hey, you took me way back. And they were Side Eyes, Lazy, Lucky, Grumpy, Baby Tear, and Munchie Chicken.
Never snapped.
Oh, we gotta watch an ad on our own video.
Well, so far, if I was to think, I'm thinking these two guys somewhere. I don't know why. I just can't figure out which one it is, man. So.
Hey, we didn't ask him no questions.
I'm certified player.
I don't know that. You could have did some research.
Well, you started this.
Okay, you know what? I started banging in 1989, North Hollywood, California.
So this part was like so funny.
I don't even understand this edit. Why are we putting Eminem in this video?
Because in that in that song he goes like he just keeps going like he's freestyling. So you guys are like kind of trolling him to like basically Gil's freestyling. Shout out Gil, bro, because he was just going so quick, bro.
606, I'm from North Hollywood, boys. They called me Stranger. I ended up going to YA in 91. I got committed for busting out some cops. My YA number 63298. I did about 6 years. I lived through the whole 90s gang banging, and now I'm here just, you know, share my story and kind of change the way I changed my life.
So he gave his YA number, which is a number that
try to guess who was
they,
that
you know,
person.
assign
So
you.
that's what I'm here for.
And you just know that by heart.
Yeah, I mean that's your identity for however long. You don't forget stuff like that.
How long did you get jumped in for?
It wasn't so much the time, but some would say 13 because out here south. But mine wasn't.
So that part was kind of wrong, the MS-13 thing.
Oh, was our fact wrong?
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta correct us.
Yeah.
This is accountability in real time.
Yeah.
Some would say 13.
So what did we get wrong?
So MS-13 is a gang, right?
Right.
The 13 he's talking to is completely something different. So,
Oh, I see.
It's false. Because out here south, but mine wasn't one of those.
Man, I'm glad I didn't have to get jumped in on my family from my neighborhoods, or you know.
Oh, so you just locked in, huh?
Oh, you didn't get jumped in?
I didn't have to.
We gotta jump a man. We gotta jump a man.
See that too kind of. I made a mental
lot of
note
people
of
always
that.
say, especially when you're young, you know what you signed up for when you signed up for the gang. Did you know what you were signing up for?
Absolutely not.
No, I was told.
Yeah, I was told too.
Laid out like this.
You were told, but sometimes you don't understand. When you're young, like, being told but understanding is a different thing. Yeah, for me, like, I was definitely told.
Wait, so you were told that you had to join a gang?
When you're told what he mentioned, what he was trying to explain was like, you know, do you know what you signed up for, right? And there are like ramifications, right, of joining a gang and consequences, and that's what he meant. Like, were you told about the consequences? Like, do you know that this will lead to either, you know, death, prison, or, you know, being strung out on the streets? And Yes.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. That's why I was a little iffy about Sean too. Just when he said that, he's like, "Oh, I wasn't told," and I'm like, "That's not how it goes," because if they're courting you in, they want you to. They know that you're gonna, face like backlash from police. You might get arrested and things like that. So they want you to be able to carry yourself.
You got to be bought in.
Yeah, so you can't really. They can't be like. They can't trick you, and then you go do your dirt, and then you come, and then you would squeal if that's the case.
Right.
You would snitch. So they would tell you, "Hey, bro, this is what's gonna happen. You see police, you shoot this person, you don't say nothing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." Like they would express that to you.
Yeah.
It's not like, "Oh yeah, here, man, let me just use you, and then throw you away," because then you can then just snitch on people, and that's what a lot of people do. So.
Just to shift gears into like more of a reflective note, do you remember that moment, like where you were told?
Of course. It was.
And you're only 12 at that time, or even younger?
Yeah, it was very simple. I was 12, and they were just like, you don't talk to, like, they lay it out. You don't talk to police. You never turn your back on your brothers. And you don't like, even with the women, like you don't mess around with each other's girls and stuff like that. So there was a whole like set of rules and regulations, if you will, and it taught us like how to move basically, and how to conduct ourselves, and how to carry ourselves. So when he said that, I was like, it's weird. And then I was making mental notes too, like he was saying that he didn't get jumped in until he went to prison, and I was like, okay, so he joined a prison gang. But I'm like, well, if you're from wherever place you're from, like normally they jump you in outside of prison, right? So a lot of stuff just wasn't adding up for me. Sorry, Sean.
And Sean wasn't from LA, was he?
He wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. He's from New York, I think, or New Jersey.
So there might have been some differences there too.
Yeah, but I think even then, overall, like there's still some, like the courting is pretty similar everywhere.
Consistent.
Bro. Yeah.
Do that.
Exactly.
They're like, oh, you want to be from the set? Oh, here you go. This right here. Go. They did what to your brother? Go do that. They didn't tell me about me growing up in life. I'm gonna get shot back in return. I've been shot 9 times, different occasions.
That was
twice.
crazy.
One was accident, one wasn't. That's not no lie.
Hey, I'm Cole, and I directed this episode.
It's so funny
Like
how
this episode,
he
if you
just
wanna see
pops
more
up
this,
when, like-
subscribe to our channel.
With Cole.
Yeah.
I know Cole. He's like the least gang member, like person to appear there. No offense, Cole.
You grew up in the streets.
Did you all get him?
I think I said him too.
We're Southsiders, so we're 13 seconds. And when he said that, he didn't have the 13 seconds. It just sounded a little off.
It's crazy how we got him out the first round.
Yeah. And when like usually, you want the mole to get as far as you can for these
Right,
videos,
of
like
course.
creatively, because that's just gonna make people watch the video longer.
Right.
And so when I found out that he got out, I was like, well, yeah, like this makes sense. It would have been really hard for him to get beyond the first round.
Yeah.
But if there was any episode where I think like the audience expects that expertise to identify the mole, this made the most sense.
Yeah. I would agree.
I know like part of your story is, you really have talked a lot about how you've changed your ways and your kind of redemptive arc with this past.
Sure.
But do you still kind of take pride in this, like having that cultural knowledge to be able to find the right person?
I think in this aspect it helps us, because it for me personally, it helps me kind of be more on my P's and Q's and be able to read people.
Right.
I'm not just reading them now for like a drug deal or like my benefit. It's more of like, reading people to help them now and kind of like, just help them overall. So
Yeah.
It's definitely a good skill.
Well, you nailed it. You got it right.
Yeah. Thanks, bro.
We can watch like one more round and then see if we want to talk about something else.
You have any tattoos?
Of course I do. I just can't show you, man. The feds are watching.
This guy, Gil was such a ham.
No, man, you better be scared of the feds, only because they're gonna get you.
They're gonna
I want to know
get
what that tattoo is right there on your hand.
Which one?
That one right there. You know which one I'm talking about.
Picasso. It's a crown.
Does it mean anything?
It's a crown.
There you go.
So you did Fed time?
Yes.
What gang were you from again?
ITF.
ITF. Okay. He had full blown like Hanyas and like
Yeah,
Japanese art.
I
I've
remember
never
that.
seen no Hispanics with dragons and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It just kind of threw me off a little.
How many different sets of papers is there?
What do you mean by sets?
When it comes to tattoos,
Or-
you know, something that obviously stands out about you is your ink.
Yeah.
Is that some? Where did you get your tattoos? Is
I
there
got-
significance?
There's like a mixture. So I got a lot in the joint, you know, in the pin, and had to do a lot of cover ups. But I got super blasted like this to cover up a lot of stuff. Yeah, but the significance is that you know, I had to do a lot of cover ups, and I didn't really I tried to do some tattoo removal. The tattoo removal process is more painful than actually getting the actual tattoo. So
It sounds gnarly.
yeah, it was pretty bad.
So are any of, you know, like your arm sleeves, is any of that from prison?
No, none of these are from prison. There's stuff from like on my clavicle, like some stuff that went across. I had stuff on my front shoulders, stuff from my neck that I had to kind of cover up as well.
Yeah. It's interesting, you know, it's an art form that kind of like thrives in that environment.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. It's so like you have to be really innovative too out there. Like they make tattoo machines out of like guitar string for the needle.
Wow.
And, like, yeah, they use
Does
like
that hurt?
It hurts, bro. It's usually a single needle, so like those ones are usually more painful, and they use like a CD player, like the little motor from the CD player.
Wow.
So instead of it going in, it's actually spinning.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Dang.
And clicks. And what click are you from? You guys actually have so like a click. Because click to me is you could be from the hood, or you could be from the locals, the winos, you know, I know a little bit about things, so just a little bit. But it might be a cop, who knows? Oh man, it might be the police, homeboy. You never know.
Quick, what clique were you from? Because you didn't.
He didn't let me finish.
Oh, yeah.
No, he didn't let me finish.
That was like a
Crystal
nervous
boy.
laugh.
Yeah.
Heard of it?
Ew.
First tattoo I got was in, when did I get my first tattoo, man? First tattoo was on my stomach, was my homie did it, my homie Chuco did it, busted out the old piano thing on the gun. Doesn't look hot whatsoever. I was about 14, 15 years old.
So, Gil, what organization you with?
Organization, that's where like,
That kind of was crazy.
Just the word organization.
very simple. I mean, I grew up on Tierra Street locals. You'll still find me on the block drinking a beer with the homies every once in a while, but in a positive way where I'm actually trying to school them and tell them, listen, brother, there ain't no future in this. Like, I want the little homies to look at me and say, I want to be like Stranger. He owns his own home. He's married, taking care of his kids, working, showing the kids how to, you know, there's a better way.
What do you do what do you work right now?
Structural concrete.
I'm a journeyman plumber, union.
Okay, that's what's up.
I try to tell everybody to join, like, because I'm in the 50s getting paid.
I do illegal activities.
I can't do that.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm a CNA, a caregiver.
So I go to prisons and speak. I do like Christian content creation too.
I mentioned I own a bunch of companies. My main business is Dealer Synergy.
I thought that was crazy. Like,
Oh yeah.
he got his own.
He has his company on his thing.
Yeah, like he tatted on his own company. That was like crazy to me, bro.
Yeah.
Big
Him and
dealerships
Gil were
all
both
over the
kind of
United States.
unique.
So I do like sales training, consulting, business development. I've helped these companies make over $1.5 billion in additional revenue. I'm also a professional speaker in the National Speakers Association, and I wrote a book about Google. So I'd say it's
He's
hard
decorated,
to classify.
bro. Like,
More than anything else, I'm an entrepreneur. I invest in businesses. How long have you been speaking at prisons and stuff?
I've been doing this since 2016.
How did you get clearance for that? Weren't you busted before?
All my you're off, you get your stuff right, you can do that. Cause I know another person to do it. Been in prison, but now he go to the prison and
That's
speak.
pretty
That's very cool.
Yeah.
If he really does it.
I got a question for you. You live out in LA or?
No, I flew in for the show. I live in South Jersey, Medford, New Jersey.
Because I know you're an accent or.
I'm 46. I worked my ass off to get rid of my accident.
It was a good job.
Thank you.
Who gets rid of their accent? Why you get rid of your accent?
yeah, that was kind of.
Yeah.
It's already bad enough. You know what I mean? People judging you and shit. Like,
So did he feel like his accent was like associating him with being in a gang?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know why anyone would get rid of their accent. You know, I would never. You'll never find me trying to like move to Australia and try to like speak Australian in an Australian accent, for whether it's for business or not. You know. But
Yeah.
that really kind of threw me off, and I just noticed now my reaction when he said that. It just like you could see it in my face. I'm just like, what?
Is he the next one to go?
I think so.
Yeah, you guys are all kind of like
Yeah.
cornering him. He stands out.
so you got to turn around and you got to look the part, feel the part if you're trying to turn around and
How do you say water?
water.
I had a question about when you were talking about tattoos. Your first tattoo was made with a homemade gun?
Yeah, the homemade gun.
With what did?
It was a guitar string.
Oh, guitar string.
They
That's
used to play pianos, like.
No.
He
We don't.
did
We
say
can't
piano.
afford
He did,
Like
yeah.
piano.
Charlie, busted out the old piano.
You guys exposed.
Here's why I show the tattoos. He just didn't seem thugged out. He seemed a little polished. No disrespect. I'm not saying he was softer like that, but he just did not scream like thugger.
Oh, she was just.
She's
You got a vote.
I'm a little bit
Yeah, that's
miffed that I
crazy.
got voted off, but it's all good. My story is just kind of crazy. You know what I mean? So it might have sounded like it was a plant, and I knew that coming in. It was either a double-edged sword.
I think it was that he said he wrote a book on Google.
Yeah. For me, it was just his tattoos, and I'm like, bro, that's crazy.
Oh yeah, the crown.
Yeah, the crown, everything else. And
Raise your hand if you want to keep playing because you think the mole is still in there.
That little doubt.
That's right. Damn, you guys do things to me, huh?
I don't think so.
I don't think so
I don't
either.
think so.
I think he is.
Is it one?
Nah.
Mad ball, man. You can't have any like mad ball.
Yo, shoot, Baru. Who's some of your homies? Did anybody do time in the army?
I don't know that.
So-
My homies is a homie.
So the reason why I asked that is anybody who's been to prison, if you've been in the California system, you'll know at least somebody from like the gang, you know. So that's where you learn actually all the different gangs, because not everyone's from the area. Some people could be from Fresno, some people could be from up north, but you'll learn about their gang in prison. So
Yeah.
I was like, I heard about his gang in prison. They're a very big gang, and I was just like, I know some of his people who I was locked up with. And so I was just trying to see where he was from. And that kind of threw me off when he wasn't able to answer it. He's like, I don't know, all my friends are in there. You know?
Yeah.
So I was just like, okay.
So there's a chance he had gone to prison and just been educated, you thought?
Yeah, I figured like, I don't know. I was still not sure if he went because of the San Quentin thing, you know,
Yeah.
but yeah.
He's all in prison, so I can't tell you who in that one.
You only spent time in prison once, or?
Twice.
How many years?
2.
2? At what percent did they give you?
What you mean? What percent? It was halftime.
What did you get busted for?
You know, be on probation, get caught with a gun, violation.
And you're in a level 2
Yeah.
for a firearm?
That ain't. My points wasn't high.
Finish the sentence for me, all right? The higher the socks.
The downer the floor.
What does that mean? What
So
does that
that's,
mean?
Like a lot of we call, essays and cholos, they wear high socks, you know. So he's saying that the more banged out they dressed, which means like the more gangster they look with the high socks, Cortezes and all that, Ben Davis, whatever. That's kind of, it just it's a joke, you know. It's like a running joke, but
But there's no like reason the socks are higher. It's just a style.
Yeah, it's just a style.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, I think somebody on the internet made that viral. Like the higher the socks, the downer the food, you know. So it's just funny.
Gotcha.
These two guys, I'm sure from the hood. You could be lying. Me, I know you think I'm not from the hood, but I am from the hood, so kind of this thing really makes it interesting.
That's the only reason why I kept playing.
Right.
That's exactly what Gil said. Because I'm not willing to take the chance, homie. And that's no disrespect. That's no disrespect.
Shoot them all. He's just staying quiet over there. He's just staying
I'm just
quiet.
soaking it in.
Just soaking it in.
I've been
I get shot.
How many times you get shot?
9.
Different occasions.
That's crazy.
First time I got shot was 5 times. 2 times right here in the shoulder, 1 on the side of the face, and 1 on this side of my buttocks, and it came out over here. When I got shot with an AK,
Wow.
another time, 2 times, this side and this
It's
side.
amazing
Then I
he's
got shot
alive.
by some Europe people. Asians, and they weren't trying to shoot me though. They were shooting at some other Asians. So my homeboys was security guards at the club in Westminster. We black, we being nosy, peeking out there. Man, one of them must have pulled out a gun, got to shooting. A bullet came through the door, hit me right in this leg.
That's
I felt
terrible,
it was so
man.
funny. I'm like, oh, I'm hit. My
That's
homeboy
terrible.
started laughing. Like, we called my mom. We're like, oh, your son got shot. First thing she say is, my car okay? Because I've been shot again. But it was funny though.
It's kind of amazing how we can talk about some guy getting shot 9 times and be like, yeah,
That's
I'm
facts.
nonchalant. But hopefully the future generations don't have those kind of conversations as much anymore.
Man, I try to talk to him and tell him.
Yeah, I tell my little homies all the time, man. Like, you guys don't want to live this way.
But they think it's cool though. Like,
I
Right.
tell them you can live like a dope dealer. You don't gotta be a dope dealer. You could be in a good
Yeah, we the best. Columbus the best.
Well, you can live like a, you know. I'm really looking at his tattoos and thinking, fake tattoos. They put some movie star type tattoos on him. I voted for him that time around. Sorry, man, Paul.
No, I just didn't trust him.
Yo.
Oh, you got his
I
name
forgot.
right.
Yeah, I totally forgot.
It's a Freudian
bro.
slip. You
Yeah.
you think he's the oddball.
Yeah.
Madball. How do you think to just pick why you think you're not the mole?
I actually have a YouTube platform called American Cholo. Why? Because I lived the Cholo life to the fullest. The last 20 years I've been living an American life to the fullest. That way I push American Cholo. That's the way I speak and maybe not sound like
What does the term cholo mean? Where'd that come from?
Chola, I think, is a Hispanic term,
Yeah.
Mexican term, and you know, just from what I understood, it always meant like a gang member.
Yeah, but is
Cholo.
it an LA specific term?
I don't think it. Actually, I think it is. It might be. I've only really heard it in LA, and SA too. SA is also a LA thing.
Yeah.
But I think other places definitely use it too. You know.
Gotcha.
A good thing because I'm breaking the stereotype later.
Well, me, I can probably hear my voice. Do I sound like a square person? You know, you look at me, average. I might scare you on the street if you don't know me, like, here, but I don't know. I'm just like, I could never be a mole. I don't believe in snitches.
I don't believe it's this.
Madball and Gil to the green room.
Yeah, I think Madball should have explained a little bit more. He was
Yeah,
just
he was
more
kind of
like,
giving up a little
Yeah.
bit.
I said, how much percent? And then he goes, what you mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, and he goes, halftime. Like, right? He
you're
said
on
San
level
Quentin. San Quentin level 2. Look,
good.
I was locked up when I caught my gun charge too, and I never went to level 2. I always went to level 3. What you
No, I
think?
agree. I
That's
agree.
true.
For sure. Just bring him in.
Look at that, man, Paul.
I'm about to cry.
Took your crate away.
I know they gonna get Gil for sure. I wasn't expecting it.
Go get killed.
You and Cindy really did, form an alliance.
Yeah. Towards the end, I was still kind of skeptical of her though. Like
Yeah.
towards the end, I was like, man, am I messing up?
Real gang members have lost and the mole is still in the box. They win the cash prize for themselves. If the box turns green, that means you three split the cash prize and you correctly.
Is that Cole speaking?
Yeah, that's Cole.
So funny, bro. The least gang member.
You guys got it.
Yeah.
On the count of 3, the mole can stand up, okay? 1, 2, 3.
Gil's face.
So I went to jail. A lot of my homeboys did it. I was around it, so if I really wanted to, I could have. But the reason why I didn't gangbang is because my family made sure I didn't gangbang. I just stayed away from it pretty much.
That's
You
respect.
made the right choice, man. You made the right choice.
I was a little nervous about this because I had to sit there and lie.
Nervous
Actual
mole.
gang members.
When I see a person,
I know that's true, man. That is like kind of one of the craziest situations you could be put in. Is like, we're gonna put you in a room full of gang members,
Yeah.
and you gotta lie straight to their face.
Seriously.
And that's like, I mean, how was that something that you really assessed a lot when you were in that life? It's just like how to make sure people are telling the truth or are trustworthy.
Absolutely, because you're doing business deals and you're doing things that really is a matter of whether you get locked up or you don't. Is based solely off of your judgment. So it's like if you slip up, it will literally like you'll mess up from the foundation. So I would say it's part of that where you just kind of fact check people, and like that's why it's called like their paperwork, a C file, which is a criminal file. People have to carry that around at times in prison to see if they're good, no good, if they're trustworthy, if they have a jacket, this, that, and the other. So yeah, you have to definitely like really check people. This is a serious thing. Yeah.
No, for sure. And thanks for watching that with me, by the way. It's really interesting to see your take on it.
Yeah.
A video I had made a few years ago, we'd done a Middle Ground. You know our show Middle Ground?
Yeah.
I had directed, we had Pyru and Bloods and Crips come together.
Yeah.
And they just had a conversation. But like something I really took away from that, I'm just going to close this because we've finished watching it.
No worries.
Something I really took away from that episode and then watching this one with you was like, it really feels like honor is like a huge element. And when people watched the middle ground that we made, you know, they were like, how is this the most respectful, like, middle ground? Because, you know, usually we have, like, Republicans and Democrats, and they're, like, yelling at each other. But then we have these rival gangs, people who, you know, supposedly when they're out on the streets would be, you know, potentially killing each other. But then when they're in the room, they're talking together, they're so, like, honorable and respectful, and there's a lot of pride. And so there's kind of, like, a contradiction there. What's going on there?
So, you know, it's because we represent something bigger than ourselves. So you know, respect is everything, and you're taught that even in a gang. Most people don't understand that when you go to prison, although, you know, outwardly people who don't understand this lifestyle, you know, outside looking in, they think that, you know, we're like murderers and drug dealers, and we have no respect, and we just. But in there, it's very structured, it's very segregated, and you have to even say things like, excuse me, when you walk past people. So it keeps a lot of people on their P's and Q's. It's kind of like, you know, if that person has a gun and I have a gun, like, we think twice about having road rage. You get what I'm saying? Because it's going to end in death. Whereas other people are like, oh, I can argue and I can do whatever, and it may end up in a fist fight, you know? So for me, it's really life and death. You know, gang members understand this very, you know, deeply, that it's all about respect, and if you come correct, it's not a problem. You know? And yeah, that's why the Bloods and the Crips understand that if I say something, it's not just going at you. You have a whole basically army behind you that's gonna feel some type of way, and now you got to deal with the whole, you know, the whole car, or the whole organization or gang or whatever. So it kind of actually keeps everybody in check. It's weird. But that's how it works.
No, it's like there's this manners element, this cultural etiquette, but then there's this potential that, like, rules and morality do kind of, like, fall to the wayside in certain circumstances.
Yes, it's very difficult to navigate.
Do you feel like, well, I mean, first of all, like, you know, watching that with me, and then just, you know, like, watching it, people are gonna be watching you watching it. What do you think is something, like, you know, you want somebody to take away when they watch a video like that?
I think just to keep an open mind that, you know, a lot of people judge, and I think that people don't understand that a lot of these people, all of us, including, you know, all these gang members, and even his name is Shu, I think, who he grew up around that. So that's trauma, you know, and people are, and it's not making an excuse, you know, we're still, you know, held accountable for the decisions that we make. But if we all recognize that we're all interconnected through struggle, then it kind of, I think compassion is the byproduct of that. You know, we start to understand, like, oh, okay, he went through some stuff, I went through some stuff, he took a different route, but we're technically all human beings, you know, and we should all at least respect each other. And if you judge somebody, it usually, I would say, don't be so quick to judge, because you never know where they come from, you know?
You know, you also were in a video we're releasing in a few days. We did an AMA with you, which is a very, very different video. People sat down. I think you were in here.
Same
people sat down and asked you questions. And, you know, I took actually a couple notes. Like, there were things that I really have taken away from your story as I've heard you as a speaker. And, you know, something that you talk about a lot is like a message that you have is kind of like not trusting yourself. Like, you know, that is something that we say a lot in contemporary culture, is like, trust yourself, listen to your heart. But for you actually felt like you needed to surrender to a bigger thing. And you kind of talked about with the gang, it's like, you know, the gang is bigger than me. And that kind of gives you structure. But then it switched for you, and later in life it became God. Do you feel like when you're out in the world, you see a lot of people listening to themselves?
The vast majority, because I also do, you know, counseling, and I also do, like, you know, consultations and, like, therapy for people, you know, spiritual things. And that's the one thing that I recognize that is the root of all their issues, whether it's financial issues, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's intrusive thoughts, is these thoughts constantly, you know, that they trust. You know, they trust in themselves, And that's why I've noticed that they're living this like up and down, you know, when they're happy and they have happy thoughts and they're feeling good, they're really happy, but then they crash. So they're living this happy, sad lifestyle. And yeah, it's just weird that the world teaches you trust in yourself, believe in yourself, follow your heart, follow yourself. You know, you have to manifest things and you have the power to do this, that, and the other. To some degree, that's true, you know, but for me, I noticed that whenever I trusted myself, like my life was just so much more miserable. I now live more like based, you know, more happy. I don't really feel like depression. I don't really feel those suicidal thoughts, those even those like drug urges. And it's because I've learned to like deny my thoughts, you know, abandon my thoughts. But I think
what does that feel like when you're abandoning your thoughts?
So it's kind of like this, you know. I could use like let's say, for example, like I feel depression, let's say, right? Let's say there's a thought that comes and it's a depressive thought or a lonely thought. Then I'll think about this, you know. If I allow this to come in and enter inside of my mind, then it'll start to affect the way I feel, because the way you think affects the way you feel. So then I'll start to feel depression and loneliness, and then later I'll start to behave like that. I'll isolate, I'll, you know, close up and lay in my bed and, you know, not want to work and this, that, and the other. So I've learned that if you allow that in, like it'll just like ruin everything, you know. And I use the analogy of like a robber and a ring camera, you know. If there's a robber that looks like me, ski masked up, tatted down, has a gun, and, you know, rings the ring camera, you're not going to let him in because he's going to rob the house, right? He'll cause harm to you and may potentially even kill you. But if you see, you know, your family member at the ring, you know, camera, you let him in because, you know, it's someone who's good, who you trust.
So those are your thoughts, the robber and
exactly.
the family. Oh,
so your thoughts come in and, you know, if you allow it, it'll just ruin inside of you. You know, and then eventually a lot of the people I deal with, the thoughts lead them to suicide. It's always like, what's my purpose? Why am I living? What's the point? And it starts to snowball, you know? So, and I've learned that when it comes to the word of God versus my thoughts, like I have to throw away my thoughts and accept the word of God, because I've noticed that thing doesn't change. Whereas my thoughts are like the ocean, high tide, low tide, happy, sad, you know, miserable one day, okay the next day. And it's just like, it's really crazy. So I try not to play into that. And I really have been living this more like calm and like peaceful, you know, lifestyle, just from switching that perspective and really thinking about my thoughts. I know that sounds crazy, but it's like,
it makes sense. It's like observing them. It is mindfulness, you know, to a degree. What is the difference? Are you good? We're coming up on 12. Do you have some time to go over?
Yeah, I'm good, bro.
Cool. Yeah. Because I got a lot of questions. I'd like to keep going.
Yeah, let's do it.
Are we good? Are you guys still good over there?
Yeah.
Cool. And Timmy, if you gotta hop out, no worries. I know we've been here almost an hour.
No, it's been an interesting conversation. So.
Cool.
Thanks, bro.
You know, what's the difference for you between? So it's like one thing to trust yourself, but you can't always trust yourself because the mind is complex.
Yes.
And sometimes the mind is, like you said, intrusive thoughts. It's sending you signal that you don't want to listen to.
Right.
But what's the difference in your mind between maybe loving yourself, like self-esteem, versus not just listening to yourself?
So I think it all has to do with self-awareness as well, right? Like when it comes down to it, say for example with the depression, you know, analogy that I use, like if you think about it, you know, you got to recognize that not all of your thoughts are your thoughts. I know that sounds kind of different, but if it were my thoughts, why would I want to be depressed? Why would I want to be lonely? So once you recognize like, oh, this isn't from me, then like it's easier to just kind of deny those thoughts. So you have to, that's why I said you have to kind of think about it. Like, is this coming from me right now? Because do I want to be depressed? I'm sure no one in this world wants to be depressed. So when you start having these thoughts, you're able to kind of like differentiate between the two. And so, yeah, I would say that it takes a level of like emotional intelligence, of course, which you have to cultivate, you know, and that's why I'm here to do what I do, because I feel like I've learned that, and it's like I want to help people with that, you know. So whereas a lot of people will be like, well, if I don't trust myself, who do I trust? You know what I mean? And it's like, no, I understand that you obviously have to trust the decisions and make judgments day in and day out. What am I going to eat today? Am I going to do this? That's important. But that's why I said when it comes to the word of God, we must throw it away. Word of God says, for example, that we're happy. We should be happy to wake up. We should think about the things and be thankful. The fact that you woke up, the fact that you have all your limbs. But the problem is we have this destructive voice that hyper focuses on just the negative.
Right.
And that just makes people like crazy. But if you really think about it, nobody would trade $10 million for $10,000. But that's what our thoughts do to us every day. Oh, you feel sad about this one thing. Or maybe it's 4 things or 5 things, right? Which is kind of rare. It's usually like 1 to 2 things that you're really, that's kind of like, like a speed bump for you. But if you just think about all the other things that you do have, you have family, you have a roof over your head, you can pay your bills, you can eat, you can, like, that alone has already overcome and is much more valuable than just that one thing that you're feeling.
Yeah.
So it's like really that mindfulness,
Yeah. No, it's amazing, man. Your story, like, just knowing, I know so much about you because last night I watched like every video you were in. And so like, knowing where you came from, and then also naturally, like, I reflect on sort of my own journey.
Yeah.
And you were raised Buddhist, right?
Yes.
But you weren't practicing. That was just kind of the cultural background.
Yeah, it was a cultural, traditional type of thing.
Yeah.
Tradition, based off of tradition.
And you said you went from not believing in God, being in the gang life.
Yes.
And in a certain way, like the gang life being kind of the God of or the structural component.
Absolutely.
To then switching, I'm just to share with you a little bit of like my journey.
Sure.
It's kind of like the opposite, if the complete opposite of a gang life, like living in the suburbs
Sure.
of Colorado, but a very spiritual upbringing, very Christian upbringing.
Oh.
And then I actually kind of flipped, like I've drifted away from spirituality, whereas for you it's like giving you such an amazing kind of undeniable transformation.
Yeah.
What is God for you? Do you feel, and I really want to know, like, honestly, what you think is your spiritual POV? Do you feel very, very convicted in that being like the right path to kind of that sense of happiness, or do you
Yes.
see God as a bigger concept?
I think a lot of I deal with a lot of people who are PKs, pastors' kids.
Oh,
believe it or
yeah,
not. Yeah, they kind of had the same journey you had, where they grew up and out of
PKs.
tradition. Yeah, they call them pastors' kids.
We should write that down. That'd be a good out and out.
Yeah, but they will, they'll usually start off strong, and then the church will tell them, hey, you shouldn't be doing this and that and the other, and it just feels like they were like micromanaging them, which is out of good intention. But I feel like for me, like, I understand what the true gospel is, meaning I couldn't do anything. Like, I had to go through these things, going to prison at 12 years old all the way up to 25 years old, doing the drugs and carrying a gun and things like that. All of that stuff kind of like led me to where I'm at now, to show me that, hey, Johnny, you shouldn't trust yourself, because when you do, you can, you're that type of person,
Yeah.
So like a criminal, 2-strike felon, this, that, and the other. So, but a lot of these religions, especially in Christianity, teaches you that you have to do something, and I think with me, I've learned that when I tried to do something, I couldn't. Like, I was literally like handicapped, if you will, like on a social level, on all different levels. I was just like, man, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, why I keep going back to prison. Nobody has answers. I took anger management, I took counseling, I was on antidepressants, Zoloft, Prozac, all that stuff. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? And I recognized it was because everyone was telling me that I had to do something. And I understood that, but I felt like I didn't have the capability to do it. It's kind of just telling a drug, like a person who's a meth addict, like, hey, stop doing meth. It's like, okay, but you're not equipping me with, the tools to overcome. You're just kind of barking orders at me.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what a lot of religions do, and not just Christianity, but I feel like especially in Christianity.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of turns people away. For me personally, though, it's like I found the true gospel, meaning, hey, you couldn't do it, and that's why God had to do it for you.
Yeah.
And as long as you lean on him, you'll live okay. So I really advise people to get a mentor who really preaches the actual gospel, and not this, hey, you need to do something, you need to do better, because we're imperfect people. And to live to a standard of perfection, we're going to keep falling short. And if we keep falling short, that's why we feel empty. If you keep failing at something, you're just gonna feel like, man, I'm inadequate, you know. And so for me, I recognize, like, I had to acknowledge, like, okay, I'm imperfect, I am messed up, but it's okay, because as long as I'm connected to God, like, he will pour his hope into me, he will pour his wisdom and his happiness and his peace into me. But I have to maintain that connection, and that is denying my thoughts and trusting what he says, you know. And that's like the root of everything. So yeah, for me, it's really, that's the center point of everything for me, is don't trust yourself, follow, you know, what he's telling you. And yeah, as I lived with the pastor, for example, the first year that I was out, I lived at the church for a little bit. Yeah. And I was like, yo, like, you know, mind you, like, I just got out of prison. I've been in prison for years. And there's people that I've met who were Muslim, atheist, agnostic, whatever, all different types of people. And they were so motivated. Like, bro, when I get out, I'm gonna get my life together, this, that, and other. 6 months to a year later, they're right back in. So that brought a lot of fear to me. And I'm like, man, I can't do this. Like, these guys are stronger than me. They have more willpower, and they kept a program and a routine, and they're still back in here. And I'm like, man. So when I got out, 1 month went by, I was thankful. Wow, I didn't go back to prison. I didn't violate. 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. Now I've been out since 2014, you know, and I'm so thankful. Yeah. Thank you, bro. Yeah. So that's kind of what essentially has helped me, is just, you know, being connected to people. You know, is
it an active thing? Like, is that something you're experiencing every day, where you're like, okay, you know, I'm getting this signal, like turning it down?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's an everyday thing, because your thoughts come all the time. Yeah. And it's like, you know, I was with the homies yesterday. We ate, you know, for my friend's birthday. Yeah. And
when you say the homies, what do you mean?
Oh, my friends from the gang.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So and they're family, like my brother's actual family, cousins. I got, you know, uncles, this, that, and the other. So. And
are they still active, or some of them still active?
So I mean, not necessarily. I think it's different nowadays. You know, but yeah, we were just eating, and I just recognized, like, hey, like, it's okay to go out and eat with them. And, you know, I mean, it's not okay to go to the strip club or go, you know, partying and stuff. So I've learned to be able to kind of like draw the line in certain places. And I think that's something that, because I have my pastor, because I'm always connected with church people, they say, you know, if you hang around a barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut. Well, if you hang around people who are happy and really peaceful, that rubs off on you, you know. And I think that it's important to have that community, rather than one that's scolding you and telling you what to do, which unfortunately a lot of these churches are doing to the youth. And that's why you don't see a lot of people in church nowadays. It's not a really important thing, and they just go off and veer off and do their own thing. It's because, you know, if you can't even rest in a church and be yourself, I mean, where else can you really be yourself, you know? So yeah.
You seem like such an enlightened person. You know, thanks, like, bro. I think you see that in the comments, man. Like, people look at you and they see such a sense of, you seem really sturdy. But then, you know, when you're telling me, you're sharing me this, that this is an active thing that you're constantly navigating, you're constantly thinking about. Yeah. It's like, it's not what I project onto you anymore, because you seem like somebody who's got it just like on lock. Yeah. Do you feel pressure to be, you know, like, just to have your shit together, on your P's and Q's, as you would say, all the time?
Honestly, like, I that's what keeps me going, I think, is the fact that, you know, I have to, I don't know, it gives me purpose, you know, to kind of like just stay like grounded all the time. You know, it's not really something that I try to do. I really think the peace and the hope is a byproduct of me just not believing everything that pops up in my head. You know, I mean, most people, I think, have that issue where they just focus on the impulsive thoughts, you know, like, oh, I'm angry right now, so they just like have to storm off and cool down. Whereas me, like, I really think about things now. Before, as a gang member, you're taught you don't think. Yeah. It's just go, you know, it's all gas, no brakes, you know. So I had to unlearn a lot of these different things. But for me, yeah, I don't think it's really stressful. It's weird. Like, I don't feel stress. It's more of like, I feel alive, and I feel like this is the way I'm supposed to live. Like, it's something that in itself brings a lot of peace. You know? Yeah, because I think people are just at least the people that I deal with, or whether it's influencers, people who are married, they're always trying to feel like they have to one up. They have to, like, they have this desire to like do better, which is good. But when you don't reach that, it causes a lot of issues internally. Whereas I'm just like, I'm living, this is part of life. We gotta, like fight these intrusive thoughts, and the more you kind of overcome them, the more the byproduct of that is peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel was shame kind of like a big thing you had to turn down?
Shame I learned, at least from a biblical standpoint, and this is why I really love the Bible. I've read it front to back many, many times, and I've learned that shame and guilt is actually not from God. Because what happens with shame and guilt is that it kind of breaks your spirit. And what I mean by that is, you think you have flashbacks of like, I have flashbacks time to time of, things that try to make me feel condemned. Hey, you did this and you're so evil. But at the same time, I recognize that when I start to play to those thoughts and I let those thoughts enter, I start to just become like paralyzed. I'm like, man, I'm paralyzed in shame, paralyzed in guilt. And then I have these other thoughts, oh, I don't deserve to live. And, my friend died in front of me, so you're over here on podcast. And, if I allow it, it starts to snowball like this. And I can't do anything, and I'd have to self-medicate and stuff. So I've learned that, at least according to the Bible, that there is the shame and guilt is not something, although it seems positive, it will really break your spirit. And if anything, I'm hopeful. I'm thankful when I think about my past, and those thoughts are like what we call convicting thoughts, where it makes you think like kind of like a seatbelt. When I'm driving 90 miles per hour and let's say I crash, I don't try to save myself, but the seatbelt kind of saves me. And I almost like, let's say I didn't fly through the window, but if I didn't have the seatbelt, I would fly through the window. Then once you think about that, you think, oh wow, I'm so thankful I had my seatbelt on. It's like a gratitude. That's the heart that I have, man. I'm so thankful that I went to prison. Which sounds crazy, but it's like that has led me to be here, to not trust myself. Right. Oh, that's right. Whenever I when I trusted Johnny Chang, like that's when misery and everyone around me was miserable. Like that's when I was right all the time and nobody could get through to me. I really believed in myself, and the end result was just destruction and misery and sadness and emptiness and ultimately even suicide. Attempted suicide before. So when I just distrust that, it's almost like the opposite happens. I'm happy and I don't have to feel shameful. And yeah, I'm wrong for the things that I did. Obviously, I paid my dues, going to prison for that many years. But, I think about it on God's side. He's taking care of everything for me. And there's just this sense of peace that I want to give people. And I see how tormented people are of their past. It's crazy. It's like they're living in the now, but then like, they've obviously went through the trauma, went through all of that. But it's just that thought. It's like, hey, remember this. And it's just, it like stifles them and it makes them so like handicapped emotionally. They can't do anything about it.
So do you love Johnny Chang, but you don't always trust Johnny Chang?
Yeah, I would say I don't love Johnny Chang, honestly, because if you strip away Jesus and God from Johnny Chang, I am just that person. I am that, person who is like traumatized and, and can, if I trust myself today, for example, I know that I can go back and do those things. So that's why I don't trust myself.
So you really are just like a vessel for God.
Yeah, I would say, and it's good, to live for other people, to live for God, because everyone's so focused on this individualism, which to a degree you need that, obviously you need to have your beliefs and your, core values, absolutely, but I feel like that should align with God's purpose, because he's all love, and if we're trying to match the standard of love, we shouldn't match it amongst my own, standard, but standard of God. So yeah, I would say that, I do hate myself because every time I trusted myself, it seemed right, but bro, I was always miserable.
Yeah.
So I don't want to live like Johnny Chang, believe it or not. And that's what keeps me humble is people are like, coming out here now hugging me and Johnny, you're so
that's what I was gonna say. Like people love Johnny Chang,
right.
Like we see.
Yeah.
You represent something.
Yeah, but I think it's because they see, which they don't recognize, is the heart of God. you know, because really without me, I tell people all the time, you know, who I minister to and prisoners and stuff. I'm like, bro, you guys would not like me. Like before God, like I was very shisty. I was very shady. I was very manipulative. I was selfish. I was just all of the above. I was a gang member, you know, and I wanted to dedicate my life to the gangs, you know, Pelican Bay and these level 4 prisons, which is, you know, maximum security. I looked at that like university. I looked at that like Yale and Harvard. You know what I mean? Like,
Do you think the justice system, I get this is a little bit of an aside, but do you think it served you well, or do you still think there's lots of problems with it?
I think there's problems with it, but I believe that it's perspective too.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like God was there in the beginning. So he allows things to happen whether I understand it or not. So I've learned in my life it's not about understanding, because there's no way we can understand something. It's like explaining or understand everything. It's like explaining a mortgage to a 5-year-old. Like you could explain it all you want, but at one point the kid
I need
is
somebody
gonna
to explain a mortgage to me, man.
yeah, and at some point, the kid is gonna have to just accept that this is what it is. So it's rather than understanding, I've learned it's about acceptance.
Yeah.
And once you accept things, you're really able to be peaceful as well. Yeah. So I accept like that. I don't get in the knickknacks and you know and the scuffles of like, hey, you know, do you think the justice system should be reformed? It's like, yeah, I do, you know, but what does God think about it? I mean, he's clearly allowing it to happen. And if he is, you know, he has to take care of it. I mean, what can I do, honestly? As much as I lobby and protest and this and that, if God doesn't switch it, then there's nothing that I can do about that.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
I wanted to talk about, you know, one of the more, I think, kind of haunting and impactful things that you share in some of your interviews. Sorry, get my feet around. One of the more kind of impactful things that you shared in some of your interviews is the loss of your friend, and you were only 12, right?
No, I was actually.
So you were older at that time.
I was older, yeah. When I got out, that
That's
happened.
when that
So I was
happened.
like 24, 25, actually. Yeah.
And only if you're comfortable talking about it, because I know that can be like a pretty intense thing to mentally revisit.
Sure.
But I'm just curious, like, how your view of you in your interview, you had said that you felt like death was following you. What was it like to process the reality of death at that time in your life?
Yeah.
And how do you think about death now?
I think it's when I say, you know, like I felt that death around the corner, it felt as though there was some kind of cloud that was looming over me, and it was just kind of like your time is gonna it's coming. It was almost like a sure thing. It was this feeling of like you're gonna die and you can't do it. It was a hopeless, helpless feeling would be the best way to explain it. You know, it's like, dang, you know, because that was very traumatizing for me. It's like I've seen people get stabbed. I've seen people die too, you know, obviously, like in California Youth Authorities, it happens often. But to have something like where it's like, no, you were supposed to die, you know, that was a whole different ball game for me. So and how I feel about that now is it's the same. Honestly, like I've noticed that there are young, you know, they call them little homies or youngsters, like they also live that way. They live a life of emptiness and they don't know where they're going. It's kind of like they're just getting pushed around, you know, and there's this hopelessness that only true people who felt this can kind of relate when I say this. It's like somebody is like stepping on your chest and you can't even like inhale or exhale. You know, you're constantly having this type of like emptiness and like I would say like hole in your heart. You know, and yeah, that feeling is the same as it was when I was experiencing it to everybody here. And it's crazy because people will express it that way to me. Ex-gang members, people in prison, you know, and not even that. People, I have CPAs who are, you know, my clients. I have influencers. Like, bro, I make like $100K a month, but I just feel empty, bro. Like, there's just no happiness in my life. And then a lot of the times, it's like that'll be coupled with like suicidal thoughts. You know, so it's really just this emptiness and void that I always talk about, and you don't have to be a gang member to feel that, you know what I mean? But I felt that all the time, and I didn't recognize that at the time, that, yeah, your time is limited in the way, you know.
Did you not fear death though? Was it almost like you embraced it at that
You know,
period?
I didn't embrace it actually. It was something that I had to accept, but at the same time, it wasn't. I guess you could say I did, but I what I remember was, I did fear death, and anyone who tells you that they don't is kind of like, and like, it's just that people don't think about it. So me, I would fear it when I would think about it, but then something would make me drown that out, like numb me even to thinking about it, until like things like that would happen, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I forget I'm living this life where I'm gonna die, so it would snap me, like these reality checks, would snap me back into reality. But people who are living that lifestyle the way they were living with me, like how I was living, is they have that one mindset where it's just like, I'm gonna live for today and that's it. And they don't really think about the future. Like I never thought about my future. So it was just kind of like that when it comes to the subject of death. Like it's there, it's in the back of your mind, but it takes like these little events to make you like wonder, really question and be like, oh, this is serious.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Death is like a really hard thing to process.
Yes.
I actually, totally different than your story, but I actually witnessed a guy drowned like a few months ago, or just like a month ago.
Yeah.
It was on the 4th of July, and my wife and I were on a boat, and these people called us over.
Yeah.
They were like, call 911, call 911. It was people who were swimming. And when we got there, this guy was he was like a dad. I think he was like 40 years old.
Yeah.
And so me and the guy I was with, we swam over there and we helped them get this guy on a boat. But by the time we got there, he was already still.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, it was a brief encounter with somebody who had just died.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But yeah, it's been, when you said like it feels like death is close by, I've felt that way since I encountered him. And so I just, losing a friend the way that you lost him, just encountering somebody who I don't even know.
Yeah.
But then thinking about what you went through, I can see how that can really like leave a trail.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's just something like I still can't quite digest.
Yeah. Like for me, what I tell people is, without like death, you can't really appreciate life. I know that sounds pretty like crazy, but same thing, like without being poor, I wouldn't appreciate wealth, and money. So I feel like these things had to happen, as crazy as that sounds. And I really think that, it, like I said, it's a reality check. Like, hey, you could literally be gone like tomorrow or this instant, So I always live kind of being appreciative. Like, hey, I'm up this morning, and it's nice to be on Jubilee and what, obviously.
Thanks, man. It's nice to have you here.
For sure. But it's like the most important thing is like, wow, like, God gave me the grace to wake up, and I've seen people there's a lot of people today that didn't wake up, sadly, So it's just like, and sometimes just knowing about it's different than like actually experiencing it, and it's like, whoa, it makes you think like, wow, like, I'm living, and life is so actually precious because anything can honestly happen. So I'm always like living this way, and I try to remember that. And I go on these platforms a lot to talk about, my testimony and just my past, because actually, for people don't know this, but it's for myself. It's a humble reminder to like remember, like, hey Johnny, when you were this way, like you were living so recklessly, like you don't deserve to live actually, and that really like keeps me grounded when everyone is like, bro, I love you, bro, I respect you. People wait in lines to like, take pictures with me, and like when they come see me at these churches and stuff. But I always remember like, I don't deserve any of this. And it's weird. It's like that keeps me grounded. Whereas I know that if I feel that I deserve it and I start to forget who I really was, I'll have this sense of like pride and arrogance, you know what I mean? And they say, the pride before the fall, and I just feel like none of this is from me. I feel like all of it is from God, so yeah.
You're like suspended in balance between like a surrender. I don't know where the poles are, but it's interesting, like you're actively seeking a direction that is good for you.
Yeah.
But then you're also actively denying yourself the instinct, instinctual desires.
Yeah, bro. You have to, man. You have to. Yeah, because it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so different than how I think about my own life, but then I see how much it's, how much you've healed and sort of how grounded you are. It's like something I admire and obviously like keep thinking about as I think about your story.
Thanks, bro.
Something I just, we could a happier note to end on, just to kind of wrap it up is like, you talk about being a parent. You're a father, right?
Yes.
How many kids do you have?
Just one.
Just one.
Yeah.
How old are they?
He's 15.
Wow. So he's growing up.
Yeah.
I have a daughter. She's 2. And I'm just now, like, we're starting to kind of have those interactions where, like, she has a will.
Sure.
But in your past interviews, you kind of talked about, like, the lessons you've learned and reflected on as a parent and seeing yourself in your kid.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, how do you talk about the past with your son and how's that gone?
Yeah.
If you don't mind sharing.
Of course. So I always talk about, again, trusting in yourself, because even kids trust and believe in themselves. So there's times where I'll chastise my son, and I'll be like, who taught you to not listen to me? And he'll be like,
that's what I'm always
what?
thinking about too.
Yeah. Right. I'm like, who taught you? And then I'm like, no, I need you to answer me. And he's like, well, I'm like, so we naturally have this rebellious state. If you think about it, and I remind him, if you think about it, without me, honestly, do you think you would have made it here? And then he would be like, no. If you're big now, and obviously you can eat now and you can cook for yourself now. You're 15, in high school, but don't ever forget, like without the Father, without me taking care of you and God, essentially, you wouldn't be able to be here. And that's what you have to always remember. So I kind of train him to think the way that I think, because that makes him recognize, like, not to trust himself. And he's noticing that the more he doesn't trust himself, the happier he's living too, because his emotions come too. And he's 15. I explained to him that there's not, like, in this world, there's things that you just have to accept. You may feel like you're qualified for a job, for example, because he wants to work, now, and he's like, I want to be like an NBA referee, because he loves basketball, and that's how I'm gonna get in, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, that's cool and all, but you have to recognize, like, what if they don't allow you to be a referee or be in the NBA, and they don't explain to you why. There's not going to be an explanation, and you're going to feel some type of way, which is normal, but you have to learn to overcome these things. So I kind of like teach him, and for me, it's all about always starting with, thinking deeply, and then also not trusting in everything that you feel, everything that arises in your heart, everything that comes out of your mind, because every time you trust yourself, it's going to be a problem, So, like, recently, he's like, Dad, let me drive your BMW. I drive a 6 Series, and then I was like, no, obviously, And he's like, why not? And I could see that it was bothering him. And I was like, because I said no, And then he was like, yeah, but, like, I can drive, Dad. I know how to drive, this. And then I was like, look, like, and then I tried to explain it to him. I was like, it's illegal. He's like, I just take it to the parking lot, they won't catch me. And I'm like, wow, you really do trust yourself, And I'm like, again, it's illegal. If you crash, you could get hurt. If you don't crash, you could get arrested, and you can go to jail. You're 15. I mean, when you get older, I'll get you one. Don't worry, And he got mad. And in the end, he was like, oh, you don't love me, And I was like, a part of my heart, rose, was like, man, this kid is terrible, because I just bought him some Jordans. I was like, bro, I feed you every day. I live at my house rent free. How do I not love? But then another side of my heart, I recognize, like, oh, this is how I am in front of God. Like, every time he allows something to happen, and I'm like, why? He can try to explain it to me, but, like, it's not about understanding, it's about acceptance. So I told him, the reason why I don't allow you is not because I don't want you to mess my car up. It's because I love you. I don't want you to get hurt, and whether you understand or not, you have to accept that. I told him straight up, and he's like, okay, he kind of, like, accepted it, and we were able to be cool, got him food, everything was good. He's like, so you said you're gonna give me a BMW later? Like, what kind of BMW? And it's just, everything was mended. But what if he was to trust himself and be like, man, my dad doesn't love me? Then if he held on to that, that could build into resentment, that could like, you know, snowball, and he could just be like, oh, you know, 20 years from now, be like, you never loved me, you didn't let me do this, and it would just be all messed up. So I was very thankful that I was able to teach him from a young age to throw away what he feels, throw away what he thinks, accept, you know, what another person is saying, and he's able to live peacefully in my house with me, you know. So yeah, stuff like that is what I teach the kids.
Yeah. I imagine he also just he wants to be you.
Yeah,
you know?
he does. He does.
You know, he sees you driving that car, and he's like, I want to be my dad, and
Yeah.
and I can understand that. You're probably like one of the coolest dads.
Thanks, bro. Yeah.
But yeah, well, thanks for sharing that, and I definitely observe. You know, my daughter's obviously very very younger, but herself is starting to emerge.
Yes.
And it's like a beautiful thing, but it's also it can be frightening because you start to get a taste of like, oh, we will have differences, we will have disagreements.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to communicate challenging truths to her.
Yes.
And she's starting to, you know, it's not even at 2 years old. It's not like she doesn't just listen. She wants to know why.
Exactly.
And there's like a burden in parenting. It's a challenge, and it's a beautiful thing because you know you want to rise to the occasion.
Yes.
To be a father, but it starts to hit you where you're like, I'm the explainer.
Yeah.
You know, or I gotta try to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, my very very last question, unless you have any questions, it's anything you want to ask us or Jubilee or me.
No, I think it's been good. I just there's like, okay, so there is a question, you know, like I kind of feel like, let me see, how do I word this? Like I love coming on Jubilee, honestly, and I feel like you know, like, is there any way we can like suggest stuff? Like, are you guys open to like suggestions and things like that?
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Fire away.
So like for me, I personally feel like you know, the middle ground stuff is so cool, you know, and I haven't seen, maybe you guys have done it, but I feel like it would be cool if you guys had an episode, you know. I guess this is not a question, but would you guys be open, I guess, to having an episode where there's like, and maybe you've done this, where there's like atheists or other people like versus Christians. Do you understand?
Yeah, you know, that was actually the very, very, very first middle ground, I think, was atheists and Christians.
That's crazy.
But we haven't done it in a long time.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think we would totally be interested in doing that. And we could definitely consider you. Would you want to be in it?
Yeah, I would, bro. I think it would just be cool because, like, I'm not the Bible-thumping Christian. A lot of people
you're
say.
very different approach.
So I feel like it would be I love that. That's a challenge for me, but I love it when I'm able to kind of like unlock things for people, you know, rather than be like, trust in Jesus. If you don't repent, you're going to go, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not all about that. I'm about like really showing love and spreading hope. So I always kind of feel like it would be cool to film an interaction, because I do that in the prisons all the time.
Yeah.
You know, in the prisons, I don't have just all Christians join my classes. I have atheists, agnostics, I have Buddhists, Muslims. So, and it's just great to like see them like kind of like, you know, unpacking things for them and being like, oh, this is cool, and finding that middle ground, you know. So
totally.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a great idea, and I would love to see you interact with people coming from the opposite side.
Yeah.
So we'll for sure consider it, and then you should tell people that leave comments below to make it happen.
For sure.
I guess my very very last thing, you know, we talk about your past so much, and you're so generous with how you're willing to talk about it, because these are difficult things that you went through. But is there anything about your future? Do you think about your future a lot? Is that something and what's something, you know, you're striving for that you see for yourself, or do you try not to?
You know, honestly, for me, like I honestly think that for the future, I just want to preach the gospel. I know that sounds so crazy, but in the gospel, I feel like has all this happiness. Like when I go on these platforms, I try my best to just talk about my story, but also talk about how it's helped me, you know, and that's part of our testimony, you know, is to kind of weave in the gospel. So in my future, I'm always like, as long as I could keep doing this type of stuff, like I think I'll be happy. I don't really set expectations, because with expectations, you know, I really feel and believe that God is leading everything in my life. So I just go on these platforms, speak about, you know, the things that I'm supposed to speak about and I want to speak from the heart, and these other opportunities will open. So I don't really have like okay, in 5 years I want this and that and the other, you know. I really leave that all up to, you know, like the divine intervention aspect. So yeah, I mean, my future is more just like, if you allow me to preach the gospel, God, like that's all I care about. When I go to these prisons and I see people like get happy, it's priceless. You know, as long as I'm able to actually help people, continuously plant hope in their hearts, unpack things for them, I would love to do that. And I want to do like speaking events too, you know, more like, I love speaking to people and then doing Q&As after, more stuff like this, you know, podcasting, and just like, if I can just stay like that, I feel like I could do this for like ever, basically.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. Thanks for being in multiple videos on our channel. Maybe, and then another middle ground in the future.
Yeah,
So,
let's do it.
It was awesome having you here, Johnny.
For sure, bro. Appreciate you.
All right.
Thank you, man.
That's it. Wrap. Cut cams.